The young man glanced at the pretty receptionist, and she immediately understood his meaning. During her short lunch break, she hurried to the library, searching for him. He appeared suddenly, pressing her against the wall. She didn't resist, having waited for this moment, especially since he was the Chaebol heir. This enormous library belonged to his family, after all. After their intimate encounter, the young master slipped his phone number into her hand. They were completely unaware that their reckless actions had been witnessed by a man named Pilju. He immediately reported to the chairman that his grandson wasn't working, but instead was involved with an employee. The chairman declared he would strip the young man of his current position. Buchen's mother, left with no other choice, discussed strategies with her most trusted confidant, Pilju. His goal was to use Buchen as an instrument of his own revenge. He proposed that Buchen marry the councilman's daughter, leveraging his future father-in-law's influence to elevate Buchen's standing within the family. Upon hearing this, Buchen vehemently protested. "Are you crazy? How can you even suggest that? That 30-year-old spinster, you can have her?" Buchen clearly wouldn't accept marrying someone else. He was already smitten with a receptionist. The next day, the chairman decided to inform his daughter-in-law that if she couldn't contribute to the family's success, he would take back the house they were living in. Now, they were facing homelessness. Naturally, Buchen was worried. He rushed to Pilju and knelt before him, pleading, "Please help me pursue Mo Hyan." Pilju's scheme was unfolding perfectly. However, the councilman's daughter wasn't easy to win over. She was known as the most unattainable woman in Korea. She skipped blind dates, and she wasn't interested in the wealthy sons of her father's colleagues. At 30, she was still single. Even her younger brother and sister-in-law thought she was putting on airs. After several days of observation, Pilju discovered that Mo Hyan hadn't forgotten her first love. If he wanted to bring Buchen and Mo Hyan together, he needed to create a romantic encounter. Buchen infiltrated a bird-watching volunteer group that Mo Hyan had joined. Seeing his opportunity, Pilju, hidden nearby, fired a shot at the flock of birds. Hearing the gunshot, Mo Hyan, disregarding her own safety, focused only on the falling bird. Pilju immediately ordered Buchen to jump into the river. It was all part of their plan. To win the heart of this kind woman, even if it was an act, he had to appear deeply empathetic. Buchen's performance successfully earned Mo Hyan's sympathy. They took the injured bird to a veterinarian together. The charade should have ended there. However, Mo Hyan noticed Buchen's soaked clothes and offered him her jacket. Buchen, still naive, believed he had captured Mo Hyan's heart. Pilju brought him back to reality. With women like her, you have to play it cool. That hat she's holding is your chance for another encounter. Now, they had to deal with the pretty receptionist. CO1 quickly received notice of her temporary dismissal. Pilju had already purchased a plane ticket, assigning her to a branch in China. CO1 knew her relationship with the young master had been discovered, but she wasn't resigned to it. She tried to call Buchen. However, they had already planned for this. The receptionist, CO1, was transferred to the China branch. Before leaving, she wanted to see him one last time. CO1? Who's that? I don't know anyone by that name. These words cut CO1 to the heart. Buchen felt terrible, but to improve his standing within the family, he had to obey Pilju. His and Mo Hyan's engagement was meticulously planned. Pilju approached the councilman, Mo Hyan's father. If he agreed to the marriage, the entire corporation would undoubtedly support his bid for mayor. The father worried about his daughter's happiness, but Pilju confidently asserted that Mo Hyan would definitely fall for Buchen, as he was about to orchestrate another chance encounter. Arriving at Mo Hyan's location, Pilju unexpectedly found her completely drunk. When two young punks approached her with ill intentions, he immediately intervened, scaring them off with a few moves. Mistaking him for her younger brother in her drunken state, Mo Hyan leaned on him and fell asleep. Pilju carried her to her doorstep. Unable to stand on her own, Mo Hyan continued to lean on him for another 30 minutes. Looking at this vulnerable woman, he even considered reaching out to touch her face. Did he disgust her that much? Of course not. In the end, Pilju quietly left. Back at home, looking at childhood photos of Mo Hyan, he realized she was his childhood sweetheart. Decades ago, after his parents' deaths, Pilju had attempted suicide by jumping into a river. A girl around his age had saved him. That girl was the young Mo Hyun. If it weren't for her timely CPR and the slap she'd given him, he might not be alive today. To curry favor with the Chaebol heir, Pil-ju was willing to use his first love as a pawn in his revenge plot, simply because she was the daughter of a National Assembly member. He wanted to facilitate the puppet heir's marriage, enabling the councilman to become mayor, which would, in turn, allow Pil-ju to control the family business. After briefing Bu-chin on Mo Hyun's habits, Pil-ju arranged their second encounter. Arriving at the cafe, Mo Hyun was delighted to see the young man who had helped rescue the bird. What a coincidence! Yes, a coincidence. Little did she know, he had already investigated her entire family history. After all these years, Mo Hyun didn't recognize Pil-ju as her first love. They exchanged names and reintroduced themselves, which stirred Mo Hyun's heart. She wanted to retrieve the hat to return it to Bu-chin. Despite being in a hurry, she didn't forget to tell her parents about this fateful encounter. Her father knew Pil-ju was manipulating his daughter, but Mo Hyun's feelings were genuine. They weren't young anymore. There was no need to hide their feelings. Bu-chin recited the cheesy lines Pil-ju had given him. However, when Mo Hyun confessed her feelings for Bu-chin, Pil-ju couldn't bear to stay any longer. He returned home, went straight to bed, and drank an entire bottle of alcohol. Bu-chin returned, completely oblivious to Pil-ju's anguish. He quickly got into bed and stared at Pil-ju. He wanted to share the experience of kissing Mo Hyun, declaring he had fallen for this special woman. Bu-chin wasn't lying, and Mo Hyun was also reliving the moment. They were clearly caught in the throes of love. Mo Hyun, unusually proactive, invited Bu-chin to go hiking with her. They laughed and chatted, completely unaware that Pil-ju and Mo Hyun's father were conspiring to use this loving couple to achieve their own goals. For these two lovebirds, nothing was more important than their romance. The chairman, upon learning about his grandson's relationship with the councilman's daughter, knew the day he'd acquire the land for development was near. He agreed to reinstate Bu-chin as the company representative. Bu-chin had both love and career success, leaving only his ex-girlfriend, CO1, still desperately trying to call him. Although no one answered her calls, she returned to Korea, penniless, jobless, and pregnant. CO1 couldn't forgive Bu-chin's betrayal. Sure enough, when the couple went to the park for a date, although the camera didn't clearly capture her face, the figure was undoubtedly CO1. She watched from afar, because it wasn't her time to appear yet. Meanwhile, Pil-ju was engrossed in eavesdropping on their conversation. Bu-chin was still playing the role of Pil-ju's younger self, even sharing the same hobbies. More importantly, the young man bragged, "Tonight, I'm going to take Mo Hyun to bed." Pil-ju regretted everything. As dusk fell, he anonymously delivered the truth to her. When Mo Hyun opened the documents, she found Pil-ju and Bu-chin's resumes inside. She finally understood they had switched identities. The Chaebol heir had disguised himself as an employee. Mo Hyun, who despised Korean Chaebols, couldn't accept this deception. Pil-ju, fearing her heartbreak, followed her to the bus stop, intending to explain and reveal his true identity. But Mo Hyun didn't give him the chance, leaving him devastated. Before he could process his emotions, a power struggle erupted within the family. Bu-chin, a man with no backbone, relied on Pil-ju for every decision. He'd assumed marrying Mo Hyun would help him deal with the second young master. But Pil-ju delivered earth-shattering news. Now, without the councilman's daughter's support, the Chaebol heir was dumped, a humiliating defeat. Bu-chin considered jumping, but he was afraid of heights. He couldn't regain Mo Hyun's forgiveness without Pil-ju's help. But Pil-ju wasn't helping anymore. He decided to pursue his first love. He secretly went to Mo Hyun's diving practice, watching her so intently that he forgot to hide. Mo Hyun eventually spotted him, causing her to swallow a mouthful of water. Pil-ju rushed to her side. "Are you following me? I saw you this morning and was worried, so I followed you here." He didn't reveal his childhood name. This explanation only fueled Mo Hyun's disgust. Bu-chin, also present, overheard their conversation. Pil-ju received a tongue lashing as soon as he returned. He was clearly smitten, yet he claimed he was only helping Bu-chin pursue Mo Hyun. Both love and career prospects went up in smoke. Bu-chin, unable to contain himself, confided in his mother. "I can't stand it. Pilju also likes Mo Hyun. Go crazy. This marriage is crucial. Even if he sleeps with Mo Hyun, I have to marry her. His mother, equally unscrupulous, decided to help her son secure the marriage. Learning that Pilju was about to meet Mo Hyun by the river, she followed him. As the two approached each other, Buchin's mother emerged from the bushes and slapped Pilju. She reminded him of how he'd come to his current position, inadvertently triggering Pilju's memories. He'd infiltrated the family for years, seeking revenge for his parents. He had to help Buchin win back Mo Hyun. Mo Hyun felt betrayed, as she deeply despised Korean Chaebols. When her boyfriend called, she blocked his number. But Buchin, the Chaebol heir, wasn't willing to lose the councilman's daughter. He consulted a lawyer about how to win her back. Without Pilju's help, it was proving impossible, as Pilju had started observing Mo Hyun a year earlier. He understood her completely. He wanted her to fall in love with the Chaebol heir, thereby achieving his goal of controlling the family. He'd not only collected all their conversations, but also continuously photographed her daily life. Wherever Mo Hyun went, Pilju seemed to be lurking nearby. Occasionally, when she was bullied, he intervened, secretly protecting her. Gradually, Pilju found himself falling for this optimistic, cheerful woman. But he couldn't let go of the grudge he held against the chairman for his parents' deaths. Now, Buchin came to Pilju, begging for help. Pilju handed over all the photos he'd collected, instructing Buchin to impersonate him again and deliver a letter to Mo Hyun. Mo Hyun hadn't forgotten her boyfriend. The photo album was a chance for reconciliation. My dear Mo Hyun, losing you has caused me immense pain. I fell in love with you at first sight. My lawyer found out that you dislike Chaebol families. So, when we met, we switched identities. Do you remember the night you were drunk? I saw those thugs approaching you. I was the one who carried you home that night. This explanation brought Mo Hyun to tears. Naturally, she forgave him. She rushed to their usual cafe, but it was already closed. Buchin received a call. It was Mo Hyun. Overjoyed that she had finally fallen for his ruse, he told Pilju, "My heart's racing." He jumped out of the car and rushed to Mo Hyun. Before she could speak, he kissed her. Having sacrificed his love for revenge, Pilju's heart shattered. He decided to burn all of Mo Hyun's photos. For years, he had changed his name, undergone plastic surgery, all for the sake of his first love's marriage to Buchin. But this also brought him one step closer to his revenge. The next day, Mo Hyun happily went to meet her future mother-in-law. The woman had already signed a prenuptial agreement with Mo Hyun's father. She proceeded to make things difficult for her future daughter-in-law, stating that after marriage, Mo Hyun would have to consult her on every decision. This was Mo Hyun's first taste of the dreaded Chaebol mother-in-law. In such situations, a bright smile usually sufficed. However, the woman scolded her. "Don't smile all the time. It looks cheap. You're about to become a member of this family. A family like this, it's better not to join at all." But Mo Hyun still believed she was marrying for love. She was unaware that the entire family was after her father's position. The chairman, eager to acquire the land, had no objections to the couple and announced a lavish wedding. Mo Hyun felt it was too rushed but didn't dare object. Buchin, eager to cooperate and finalize this beneficial marriage, offered to meet his future mother-in-law. Mo Hyun's mother immediately pegged the young master as a playboy and demanded an on-the-spot vow, "Swear you'll love only my daughter for the rest of your life." Without hesitation, Buchin made the promise. His speed and certainty were almost too much. Today, Buchin was scheduled to announce his upcoming marriage to the press. While a female staff member was applying his makeup, he felt a sense of familiarity. He was stunned. Wasn't this his ex-girlfriend, CO1? At that moment, coincidentally, Mo Hyun appeared. CO1 seized the opportunity and approached him. "Hello?" "Huh? Oh, yes." This simple greeting was enough to unsettle Buchin. One was the councilman's daughter, whom he had worked hard to win over. The other was his pregnant ex-girlfriend. He didn't want to lose either. He was supposed to announce his marriage to Mo Hyun, but he couldn't bring himself to do it. After the interview, Mo Hyun, instead of being upset, praised his speech. However, when Buchin saw CO1 leaving, he excused himself and followed her, pressing her against the wall just like their first encounter. "What do you want?" You better not get angry, you'll scare our little angel. Scare who? Hee-yoon? The name you chose. Didn't you say you thought of our child's name the first time you met me? Buchin was about to dismiss it as a joke. Just then, Mo Hyun arrived. He tried to prevent his two girlfriends from meeting, but she needed to use the restroom, and he couldn't follow. The two women ended up in the restroom together. CO1 pretended to call her obstetrician, speaking loudly enough for Mo Hyun to overhear her pregnancy. She also accidentally dropped her notebook. Mo Hyun saw the baby's name, the same name she had planned to use for her own future child. What a coincidence. Expecting a dramatic confrontation, Mo Hyun was surprised when CO1 chose to hide the truth. However, before leaving the restroom, CO1 fainted. Mo Hyun, understandably frightened, called Buchin for help. He carried CO1 to the hospital. CO1, drenched in sweat, was clearly not faking. The doctor confirmed she had fainted from stress. Fortunately, the baby was unharmed. She wanted to thank the young master personally. CO1 was no longer her confident self. Her true motive for seeing Buchin was to hold the hand of her child's father. Mo Hyun, oblivious to the situation, urged her boyfriend to meet her parents. Buchin was torn. He felt sorry for young CO1. But as a lawyer, Pil-ju wouldn't allow Buchin to jeopardize the marriage. When CO1 returned to her room, a pounding on the door startled her. The sturdy door was quickly broken down. It turned out Pil-ju had sent someone to force entry. Seeing the man who had once coerced her, CO1 was terrified. Pil-ju feigned kindness, telling her to leave. He said he had arranged for her to give birth at the best hospital in China. CO1 was unwilling to be dismissed like this. She wanted Buchin to live in fear every day. If he ultimately denied the baby's existence, she would go directly to its grandmother. This completely enraged Pil-ju. Listen up, you nuisance. Stop clinging to me like a restless ghost. Go to China, give birth to the child, and raise it in silence. Do you understand? Now go. Faced with a man blinded by hatred, the frail woman couldn't defy Pil-ju's warning. Part of his reasoning was for her own good. Entering the power struggles of a Chaebol family would undoubtedly endanger the child. Years ago, he himself had been discarded in the same way. Pil-ju left a bag full of money at the door, money he had provided personally. His assistant worried CO1 would be shamelessly greedy, but Pil-ju said as long as she stayed out of the country, he would continue to support her. After all, the family's fortune would eventually be his. However, upon returning home, Pil-ju was intercepted by Buchin. Before Buchin could speak, Pil-ju instructed him, "If you want to maintain your standing in this family, you must forget the woman named CO1. Buchin's mind was in turmoil. He asked Pil-ju to postpone announcing his marriage. The next day, however, photos of him and his fiancée on a date were leaked online. This was also orchestrated by Pil-ju through his assistant. CO1 lost her motivation to pack for China. Suddenly, she read a comment online. The Chaebol heir is marrying the councilman's daughter solely for the family's benefit. Therefore, guessing that Buchin had his own struggles, she decided to stay. She even returned the bag of money to Pil-ju. Meanwhile, Buchin angrily confronted Pil-ju for going behind his back. Unexpectedly, this was the chairman's idea. They had to expedite the marriage. Helpless, Buchin obeyed his grandfather's decision, taking Mo Hyun to his deceased father's memorial. This girl was truly pitiful. She was unaware that the chairman's favoritism stemmed from her father's impending mayoral appointment. Even before marrying into the family, she was already the chairman's favorite. Everyone in the family regarded her with envy. Although Buchin agreed to marry Mo Hyun, he still longed for CO1. He intentionally drank too much, pushing the responsibility of taking Mo Hyun home onto Pil-ju. After everyone left, he sobered up quickly and secretly drove to the secret meeting place he had arranged with CO1. Reunited with his beloved, Buchin wanted to explain everything. But CO1 returned the money. Buchin expressed his deep remorse. CO1, however, had decided to recapture his heart. Ignoring his explanations, she walked straight towards the riverbank. She intentionally let go of her forced strength, allowing her vulnerability to show in front of her child's father. Buchin, heartbroken, finally embraced her tightly. Their relationship became increasingly ambiguous. They were meant to be together, But for revenge, Pilju had pushed her towards Buchin. Naive Mo Hyan never dreamed that her first love had changed his name and undergone plastic surgery. But this time, he was in trouble. The chairman had investigated his acquisition of a large number of the family's shares. He suspected that, as Buchin's lawyer, Pilju had ulterior motives. Pilju frankly stated he intended to transfer these shares to Buchin, helping him become CEO. It was clearly the chairman's wife's scheme, but when exposed, she blamed Pilju. To maintain the charade, she slapped him. Pilju was accustomed to being the scapegoat for Buchin and his mother. Buchin knelt, begging his grandfather for forgiveness. The chairman never imagined that Pilju was the illegitimate grandson he had abandoned years ago. Unmoved by Pilju's explanation, he fired him and banished him from the family. Pilju was already used to this heartless family. Only Buchin felt reluctant. For over a decade, Pilju had taken the fall for him 3 times, willingly given up his first love, and secretly provided for his ex-girlfriend. He couldn't bear to let his right-hand man leave like this. Buchin assured him he would find a way to persuade his grandfather. Just then, the chairman called. "Yes, grandfather." Buchin expected a glimmer of hope for Pilju to stay, but after the call, he didn't mention it again. Pilju quietly left the family he had been with for over 10 years. Not out of sentimentality, but out of frustration that his revenge plan had been disrupted. Lost in thought, he ran into his first love, who happened to be there for a photoshoot. They had been childhood sweethearts. Everyone knew Pilju had changed his name and undergone plastic surgery. Just as they were sharing a tender moment, it started to rain. Worried about Mo Hyan getting wet, Pilju quickly used his jacket as an umbrella to shield her as they rushed to the car. The rain continued to pour, and the atmosphere became awkward. Sitting in the trunk of the car, they reminisced about high school. Mo Hyan confessed she missed the boy who had disappeared years ago. Knowing it was him, Pilju asked, "What would you do if you found him?" Mo Hyan replied, "If I found him and he was doing well, I'd be happy for him. If he wasn't, I'd definitely help him." This innocent, kind-hearted girl made even me ache for her. But Pilju's path of revenge was far from over. He had ruthlessly dragged his first love into this battle. However, his progress was severely delayed. He'd spent the last 2 days holed up in his office. Today, Pilju resolved to formulate a plan. He immediately sought out Councilman Na, instructing him to stay out of the family's affairs, no matter what happened. Then, he publicly exposed the chairman's wrongdoings online. Without the councilman's support, the chairman couldn't suppress the public outcry. Mrs. Mal Ran suggested bringing Pilju back. However, the chairman slammed his fist on the table in anger. Miraculously, his old bones didn't break, but he was hospitalized. However, the family needed someone to cooperate with the investigation. Upon waking and learning that his grandson had volunteered, the chairman, helpless, swallowed his pride and called Pilju. Unexpectedly, Pilju had already been contacted by Mo Hyan. So, Pilju went to the investigation room. Seeing the man who gave her a sense of security return, Buchin breathed a sigh of relief. But Pilju had a condition. Buchin must break up with his ex-girlfriend. When Buchin arrived at CO1's place, she believed she had won his heart. She had prepared a lavish meal. Buchin, seeing the food, threw it directly into the trash. He said, "I have to marry Mo Hyan. Understand what I'm saying. Consider us done. You can't replace her." Despite uttering these heartless words against his own feelings, for the sake of the family, Buchin resolved to abandon CO1. Even if she offered to be his mistress, he gave her no chance. Leaving behind a pile of money, Buchin left. Next, he arranged to meet Mo Hyan, presenting her with the diamond ring he had prepared. Faced with Buchin's simple proposal, Mo Hyan accepted. Pilju returned to the family. His sacrifice was acknowledged by Mrs. Mal Ran. He didn't appreciate this gesture of affection, however, because she was his stepmother and a target of his revenge. Now, they had to collaborate on one thing, leveraging the chairman. If they helped him resolve this crisis, then control of the secret funds must be transferred to Mrs. Mal Ran. The chairman, sensing coercion, ultimately agreed, fearing the loss of Councilman Na's support. However, during the handover, the company director was unwilling to relinquish his power. Although he allowed Pilju to sign the contract, he had a new plan. He went to the secret meeting place between Pilju and Councilman Na. If the councilman would prevent the marriage between his daughter and the Chaebol heir, he would help him become mayor. Furthermore, they would offer loans when providing funds. The councilman wavered. Returning home, Councilman Na saw the ring on his daughter's finger and asked if she and Buchin had already consummated their relationship. Mo Hyun wasn't that kind of person. Although fond of Buchin, she valued herself most. Some things should only be done after marriage, openly and legitimately. Knowing his daughter was deeply in love with the Chaebol heir, Councilman Na decided to meet with his future in-laws. Although it was a marriage of convenience, he wanted his daughter treated fairly after the wedding. Unexpectedly, Mrs. Mal Ran bluntly declared, "Our chairman is eager for a grandchild, so we want to change the wedding date to coincide with Mo Hyun's ovulation." Regarding Mo Hyun's medical report, Mrs. Mal Ran insisted children should make their own decisions. She emphasized again that their family wasn't ordinary. If Mo Hyun benefited from their wealth, then her body also belonged to the family. Councilman Na knew his daughter's marriage would be a nightmare. To secure campaign funds from the Chaebol family, he still arranged for his daughter's engagement. After the engagement, Buchin smoothly ascended to a higher position. He hoped Mo Hyun would move in with him. Although his fiancée, she held firm to her principles. While Buchin was her first adult boyfriend, she had a special gift for him: the words, "I love you." Buchin had waited a long time for this. With the councilman's daughter's backing, the director position was within his grasp. But he never expected the secret kept for over 20 years that awaited him. Through family DNA testing, it was revealed that Buchin wasn't the chairman's biological grandson. He couldn't accept this news, as the chairman insisted on leaving his fortune only to blood relatives. Buchin went to the river, contemplating suicide, but the winter water was frigid. After a few minutes, he rushed back to his car. Seeing a man holding a baby pass by, Buchin suddenly remembered his and CO1's child. Unexpectedly, she called him. "I really want to know if the baby looks more like you or me. The baby's starting to kick." These words struck a chord within Buchin. He had to live well to secretly care for CO1 and the baby. But having been away from home for days, he didn't know how to explain things to Mo Hyun, so he drove recklessly, intentionally causing an accident. Mo Hyun was extremely worried when she heard the news. Buchin feigned vulnerability, claiming he wasn't the family's biological grandson and couldn't inherit the chairman's fortune. But Mo Hyun didn't care about those things and promised to keep his secret. This kind-hearted girl was ultimately deceived. Their wedding proceeded as planned, but as Pilju watched his beloved walk down the aisle, he felt a pang of sadness. The thoughtful screenwriter promptly closed the scene. The family honored their agreement with Councilman Na. The first installment of campaign funds was delivered in full. The most pitiful one remained Pilju. He could no longer yearn for Mo Hyun, and the responsibility of caring for Mrs. Mal Ran now fell upon him. Perhaps this was the price of revenge. 5 years flew by. Mo Hyun and Buchin, working at the London branch, finally boarded a plane back home, though still childless. Buchin told Mo Hyun to get some sleep and quietly slipped away to the plane's bar. There, a woman turned around with a drink in her hand. Wasn't that CO1? What had Buchin been up to during those 5 years in London? Mo Hyun couldn't sleep and decided to get some sleeping pills. Luckily, CO1 left quickly, but when Buchin returned, Mo Hyun noticed lipstick on his glass. At the airport, Pilju observed a woman with a child who looked strikingly like CO1, a disconcerting resemblance. Could CO1 also be back in the country? The woman and child disappeared into the crowd. Back at the parking lot, Buchin left Mo Hyun standing in the cold while he made a call hidden behind some bushes. Mo Hyun was used to his busy schedule, but the perceptive Pilju sensed something amiss. Sure enough, the person on the other end of the line was the woman from the plane. "Hee-yoon, it's Daddy. Daddy, I'll take good care of Mom, don't worry." It turned out that during the 5 years of his marriage to Mo Hyun, Buchin had never stopped contacting his ex-girlfriend. Moreover, they were on the same flight back home. This was the reason Buchin hadn't had children with Mo Hyun. However, the chairman was impatient. His second son's child was already quite grown. He even personally made a fertility charm for the couple. It was now 2023. Faced with the chairman's expectations, Mo Hyun didn't dare to object. Now that we're back, I'll definitely relax so it's easier to get pregnant. That's right. Good girl. Come on. Yo, my grandson, you have to do your part too. It was clear that ever since Mo Hyan married into the family, decisions like this were no longer hers to make. Her mother-in-law commanded her to get pregnant within a year to fulfill the family's wishes. Before bed, Mo Hyan meticulously applied her skincare routine, then waited quietly for her husband. Unexpectedly, Bu Chen received a call from someone listed in his contacts as Team Leader Lai. Although he claimed it was an urgent hotel meeting, Pil-ju felt he was lying through his teeth. Bu Chen's urgency stemmed from his son with his ex-girlfriend being hospitalized. CO1 wasn't content with their son carrying her last name any longer. He should rightfully inherit the Jang family name. Bu Chen was in a difficult position. He knew keeping them in Korea would eventually lead to trouble. CO1 offered to leave and take their son to China, on the condition that his last name be changed to Jang. Bu Chen readily agreed. Meanwhile, Mo Hyan felt dizzy while walking. Fortunately, Pil-ju happened to be passing by. The doctor confirmed she was over 4 weeks pregnant. Having suffered 2 miscarriages, she had to be extremely careful. Overjoyed, Mo Hyan felt she was finally going to be a mother. Pil-ju offered his sincere congratulations and promised, along with Bu Chen, to protect her and ensure she didn't experience undue stress. Intending to call Bu Chen with the good news, Mo Hyan decided to tell him in person. She managed to get discharged from the hospital that night, but Bu Chen was already sound asleep. The naive Mo Hyan sat in front of the mirror, whispering to her unborn child, "Daddy must be very tired from work." Unaware, he was scheming to protect his other child. Overwhelmed by calls from CO1, Bu Chen silenced his phone, inadvertently infuriating her. CO1 decided against going to China. The next morning, she called Mo Hyan. Bu Chen never imagined she would bring their son directly to his house. After several encounters, Mo Hyan considered CO1 a good friend. When she introduced the CO1 to her mother-in-law, the older woman felt a sense of familiarity. CO1 had previously worked for the company, but thankfully, her mother-in-law didn't recognize her. CO1 complimented their house, hoping for a tour, but really wanting to find Bu Chen and surprise him. Unable to find him, and after spending so much time chasing after her son, she suddenly felt faint. Clutching her stomach, Mo Hyan collapsed in pain. Fearing another miscarriage, CO1 quietly rushed her to the hospital. Thankfully, everything was all right. CO1 deliberately brought Hee-yoon to the hospital and refused to leave, knowing Bu Chen would eventually show up. When he finally arrived, he was stunned to see the consequences of ignoring her calls. He only calmed down upon hearing Mo Hyan's voice and began to play along. But just then, a bewildered Pil-ju burst into the room. Amidst the confusion, the doctor announced Mo Hyan's pregnancy. Bu Chen's emotions were a whirlwind. CO1 was on the verge of tears. To lessen the awkwardness, Bu Chen quickly embraced his wife, subtly signaling his choice. The situation escalated with the arrival of the formidable matriarch, silencing everyone. The perceptive woman had already investigated CO1's identity. When the 5-year-old ran into the room, the pieces finally clicked into place. Bu Chen feigned fear, terrified the child would call him Dad, as they had to maintain the charade in front of Mo Hyan. Pil-ju swiftly carried the child out. CO1 followed but was intercepted by the matriarch. While outwardly thanking her for caring for her daughter-in-law, she pulled CO1 aside and issued a chilling threat. This family doesn't welcome nameless women or their children. There was another mother and child who disappeared. If you interfere, you'll meet the same fate. CO1 was unaware the woman referred to Pil-ju, who had miraculously survived. This 5-year-old would share his fate, giving CO1 one day to leave before Pil-ju did something drastic. The matriarch then berated Pil-ju for hiding CO1 and her son. If they weren't eliminated, her son's marriage and the family's plans would be ruined. Bu Chen knew his mother wouldn't spare CO1. He was certain Mo Hyan, being kind, would forgive him after he confessed. However, Pil-ju immediately rebuked him. Does being kind mean deserving to be deceived? Besides, I'm ashamed enough for having pushed you two together. Bu Chen, speechless, only hoped to give his innocent son a legitimate identity. Pil-ju, momentarily softening, was then dismayed to find Bu Chen with CO1, swayed by her tears. As Bu Chen left, CO1 heard frantic knocking. Pilju, already inside, intended to eliminate her, but hesitated about the child. While he couldn't bring himself to act, the matriarch had anticipated this. Her hired assassin broke in, only to be swiftly dispatched by Pilju. Terrified, CO1 hid. Checking later, she found both men gone, realizing that instead of waiting for disaster, she should strike first, making Mo Hyun her target. When they met again, Mo Hyun was surprised Hee Yoon wasn't present. CO1 offered to show her pictures. Both women were victims of the same deceitful Chaebol heir. Neither was at fault. CO1 pointed out she knew Buchan first. If her son took his father's name, his father would disappear. But Mo Hyun couldn't accept the betrayal of her first love, the relationship she had poured everything into. It shouldn't have ended like this. The team leader Lee in Buchan's contacts was CO1. Mo Hyun's world shattered. Hospitalized, the 35-year-old couldn't bear the shock and lost the baby, but she also gained clarity. Using Buchan's phone, she called team leader Lee. She would accept the child bearing the Jang name, but on the condition he also took CO1's last name. While CO1 couldn't accept this, the decision was out of her hands, as Pilju would ensure it happened. Facing Mo Hyun's unsettling calmness, CO1 was at a loss. Buchan was bewildered by Mo Hyun's reaction. He expected rage, but found her eerily empty. "I loved you with my life, and I don't regret it. Bring the child, we'll have another." He readily agreed. "We'll do if, because you're tainted." The naive Mo Hyun is gone forever. But her transformation wasn't complete. Her father's mayoral ambitions remained. She told her mother-in-law she had forgiven Buchan. "Councilman Na becoming mayor is our family's dream." The matriarch praised her foresight, unaware of Mo Hyun's own calculations. Despite her outward strength, she needed emotional release. She drove a long distance to the place of encounter. Earlier that year, approaching the abandoned cabin, she saw a familiar figure with a pronounced scar. Pilju's appearance 20 years prior. Her cherished first love was the lawyer who had always cared for her. Tears flowed as Pilju recalled those precious days. He couldn't deny the past, but there was no turning back. He had gone too far in his quest for revenge, manipulating his first love into a painful marriage. Seeing her beloved happy lifted a weight from Mo Hyun's heart. Pilju explained his name change and plastic surgery. "I needed to do some things for an innocent family. That's why I come here every year to pay my respects." Unaware the culprit was her mother-in-law, Mo Hyun agreed to keep his secret. They now shared a goal, helping her father become mayor. Unbeknownst to Mo Hyun, her father had been accepting funds from the Jang family for years, propelling him in the polls. However, they underestimated their rivals. Uncle Sung Man, backing another candidate, gathered evidence of Councilman Na's illicit dealings. As the Jang family celebrated the seemingly successful election, news broke of Councilman Na's corruption, implicating the Jangs and their investigator. Everyone was stunned. Councilman Na knew it was over. Only Sung Man was triumphant. The councilman became a casualty of the family feud. Mo Hyun, still believing in her father's innocence, wanted to confront him, but Pilju, needing to protect her, intervened. As her husband, Buchan was irrelevant, offering only empty words of concern and misplaced jealousy towards Pilju. He ruined everything. The scandal escalated quickly, with online rumors accusing Councilman Na of using his daughter to gain favor with the wealthy. Sensing Mo Hyun's impending discovery of her father's betrayal, Pilju, as her lawyer, took her to see him. She demanded the truth. Relieved by his denial, she remained oblivious to the irreparable damage. Pilju, knowing better, subtly urged the councilman to shift blame onto Sung Man, sparing Mo Hyun further pain. Despite fabricating evidence to help Man avoid blame, he underestimated the chairman's love for his son. The chairman learned about Man using funds to support another candidate, but instead of scolding him, he told Pilju to quickly assist the other candidate because Mo Hyun's father's political career was on the verge of collapse. This old fox truly lacks humanity. Once the councilman was out of the picture, the chairman immediately approached him, unwilling to let his son face jail time over the incident. If all hope was lost, then the councilman would bear the burden alone. After all, his daughter was still unaware of being used. The councilman understood the chairman was pushing him towards destruction. When he saw Mo Hyun and her mother, he bluntly stated the marriage now depended solely on Mo Hyun's unborn child. He told her to protect his grandchild well. Mo Hyun couldn't bring herself to reveal the miscarriage. Councilman Na's mayoral dreams were shattered. He had lost all ambition, and though his wife didn't blame him, he felt ashamed before his daughter. She deserved to know, so he confessed to accepting money from the Jang family, telling Mo Hyun that his meeting with Buchin from the beginning was solely for personal gain. The news hit Mo Hyun like a thunderbolt. Even the father she trusted most had deceived her. Pil-ju suddenly recalled the chairman's words and sensed something was amiss. He frantically ran to Councilman Na's room. Mo Hyun also realized something was wrong. However, when Pil-ju reached the door and looked through the window, he saw the councilman had taken his own life. Mo Hyun, married to a Chaebol heir, her situation was truly tragic. Immediately after her father's funeral, her mother-in-law summoned Pil-ju to calculate Mo Hyun's divorce settlement, now worthless with her father gone. They had to get rid of her quickly and arrange another advantageous marriage for Buchin. The chairman was even more heartless. Learning about the miscarriage, he flatly declared Mo Hyun wouldn't remain in their family. Pil-ju was accustomed to the family's swift changes in loyalty, faster than an ex-lover's. He discreetly retrieved the councilman's belongings, listening to the recordings on his phone, including his conversations with the councilman. If these fell into investigators' hands, he would certainly be prosecuted. So Pil-ju instructed his assistant to erase all evidence related to him, leaving only the conversations between Councilman Na and Chairman Jang, telling Mo Hyun this was the truth she needed to know. When Mo Hyun learned the chairman had driven her father to suicide, tears streamed down her face. She regretted loving Buchin, which led to her father's death at the hands of her in-laws. Pil-ju outwardly suggested a divorce from Buchin, but secretly planned to collaborate with Mo Hyun against the chairman. Mo Hyun was naturally unwilling to accept her fate. Buchin's betrayal had ruined her life, completely destroying her once happy family. She was determined to make the entire family pay for their actions. Buchin would be her first target. He still loved Mo Hyun, but felt ashamed to accept her forgiveness. He was resolute in not allowing his son to return to the family and interfere with their relationship. If CO1 had refused to go to China before, this time he would tell her to take the child to the S and send her the promised child support. CO1, as always, was reluctant, but gentle persuasion was no longer effective. Buchin expressed his remorse to Mo Hyun, wanting to spend his life protecting her, but CO1 wouldn't let things be. Buchin and his wife pleaded with the chairman, assuring him they would do their best. Mo Hyun, also plotting revenge, expressed her full cooperation with Buchin and the chairman. Despite accepting his daughter-in-law, Buchin's resolve faced further trials. His younger brother pressured him to relinquish the company's directorship, threatening to reveal to Mo Hyun that Pil-ju orchestrated their chance encounter. Though the position was crucial, Mo Hyun couldn't handle another shock. On the day of his appointment, with the directorship within reach, Buchin willingly conceded it. For Pil-ju, this wasn't a major issue, but his mother couldn't accept her son's choice. Buchin's ears, deformed from years of her pinching, suffered again as she accused him of being bewitched. Despite the pain, Buchin remained unyielding. Accustomed to her domineering ways, his mother was oblivious to the new presence seeking revenge within her household. Mo Hyun told Pil-ju she had to stay and uncover the truth. Looking at the woman he'd saved years ago, he vowed to protect her. Pil-ju revealed their plan was just beginning, handing her a pawn to use against his mother. "I'll give you 10 times the compensation. Divorce Buchin. Even if you offer me 10,000 times, I will absolutely not divorce. Are you rebelling, mother? If you ever mention divorce again, I won't tolerate it. Do you still think my father was a councilman? I know the truth. My mother-in-law isn't true blood in this family." This revelation was enough to force his mother's compliance. If the chairman learned their true identities, they would be expelled. Pil-ju became the biggest beneficiary. He had already investigated Buchin's parentage, discovering he was the son of the madam and the chauffeur, but the timing hadn't been right. Mo Hyun's arrival became a crucial step in his revenge. But this was her first foray into ruthlessness, and she trembled after revealing the truth. From then on, her mother-in-law's attitude changed dramatically. Buchin, unaware of the situation, found it strange when his mother suggested Mo Hyun work at the family's welfare foundation. Pil-ju sensed something was amiss. He hadn't expected Mo Hyun's audacity in making such a demand. They had ruined her family, and now she wanted them to let her work there after divorcing Buchin and leaving with her mother. But Mo Hyan had launched her first counterattack and couldn't turn back. "Do you want to work at the Welfare Foundation?" "No, mother wants me to. I should have another child. It's best I stay home." The chairman clearly sought an excuse to refuse. Mo Hyan countered, claiming she'd seen it in his father's will, emphasizing her commitment to fulfilling his wishes. Her assertiveness stunned him. He agreed to let her work at the foundation, even offering a significant role. After Mo Hyan left, he immediately questioned his wife, asking if Mo Hyan had leverage against her. Defeated, his wife could only offer strained praise for Mo Hyan. Thus, Mo Hyan successfully joined the Welfare Foundation. Her vice presidency, however, displeased two employees. They weren't virtuous individuals, but Mo Hyan was unafraid. She was no longer the weak woman of the past. Only when returning to her mother's home did she allow her grief to surface when her mother mentioned the miscarriage. Suddenly, Mo Hyan remembered CO1, the woman who caused her to lose her child. She had to confront her and make her pay. CO1 hadn't anticipated these consequences. She acted to protect herself, as Madame Mal Ran constantly sent people to eliminate Hee-yoon. Mo Hyan couldn't believe her mother-in-law would resort to such measures in this day and age. Lawyer Pil-ju could testify. He was the one who saved them from death that night. They were both victims of Buchin. Mo Hyan empathized with CO1's plight, but she wasn't afraid of her vicious mother-in-law. She held the leverage to bring her down. So, immediately, she demanded that Madame give Han official recognition and leave CO1 alone. Mal Ran called her foolish, saying that any future children would diminish her own child's inheritance. But Mo Hyan fundamentally didn't care about their wealth. Madame bluntly stated that in Korea, everything has a price and there's nothing they can't do. This statement suddenly sparked Mo Hyan's interest in money. Her mother-in-law agreed to consider Han's situation. Mo Hyan still insisted that she provide for CO1. Mal Ran completely exploded, unable to bear her daughter-in-law's excessive demands any longer, and sought out the chauffeur to discuss a plan. She was determined to end this nightmare for herself. The chauffeur had helped her eliminate Pil-ju's family years ago, but this time, facing his son's wife, he truly couldn't bring himself to do it. Madame, having nothing but money, resorted to hiring someone else to tamper with Mo Hyan's car. After discovering the tampering, the chauffeur still couldn't bear it and told Buchin the truth. He immediately called his wife. Luckily, it wasn't too late. Just as Mo Hyan was about to drive off, she was tricked into getting out of the car. This scene was quickly sent to Pil-ju's computer. Both men were protecting the kind-hearted woman. Knowing Madame's murderous intentions, Pil-ju had instructed his subordinates to keep a 24-hour watch. But over time, mistakes were bound to happen. Pil-ju insisted on taking Mo Hyan to meet someone. Naturally curious, Mo Hyan immediately followed him down to the parking garage. Neither of them expected the car to have been tampered with. Coincidentally, Buchin also arrived to check his wife's car. He knew his mother wanted to harm Mo Hyan through the pedals, but he casually got in the car anyway. Unexpectedly, he saw Pil-ju leading Mo Hyan away. Jealousy instantly flared. He had to follow them. But their destination was quite secluded, and Buchin's car was soon left behind. Upon entering the room, the unfamiliar white-haired old man made Mo Hyan uneasy. The motionless figure on the bed was Councilman Na. Mo Hyan wept silently. Having barely emerged from grief, she now had to accept the reality that her father was living in suffering. What she found strange was that she had clearly seen her father lying in a coffin. Why was he now on life support? This was clearly a charade. Pil-ju had secretly moved the councilman here. Despite this, Mo Hyan was determined to stay with the Jang family. She wouldn't heed Pil-ju's advice to leave, but would stay and care for her father. Halfway back, Buchin quickly caught up. Just as Pil-ju's car accelerated to 120 kilometers per h, the steering wheel and brakes completely failed. Following behind, Buchin heard the crash and sensed something was wrong. Seeing the shattered glass on the ground, he ran to the scene, only to be met with an unbelievable sight. Pil-ju had shielded Mo Hyan with his own body. The man had kept his word, saving his benefactor with his life. What truly bothered Buchin was that even now, Mo Hyan was only concerned about Pil-ju's safety. His jealousy intensified, leading him to a crucial decision. Bu Qin informed the chauffeur to rush to the accident scene, then got into the tampered car. He floored the gas pedal, intending to prove his love for his wife with his life. But before the car hit the barrier, Bu Qin suddenly panicked and jumped out. This was clearly a smart choice, because the car's impact with the barrier wasn't severe. However, in the next instant, a tremendous explosion erupted. Mal Ran had indeed acted ruthlessly, stopping at nothing to harm her daughter-in-law. Fortunately, Bu Qin only sustained minor injuries after jumping out of the car. He not only showed his mother his determination to protect Mo Hyun, but also successfully salvaged his fading love. However, Pil-ju wasn't so lucky. More than a month had passed, and he still hadn't regained consciousness. Mo Hyun felt incredibly guilty. This man had risked his life to protect her. An orphan burdened with a deep vendetta lay in a hospital bed, and the Jang family was still taking advantage of him. The incident caused the chairman immense distress. He personally ordered that Pil-ju be saved at any cost. The chairman knew full well that this was his son's doing, yet he didn't blame him, only lamented his stupidity. He said directly, "If Sung Man were half as capable as Pil-ju, things would be so much better. I wouldn't have to worry about some stranger kicking the bucket." After her advisor's downfall, the madam also felt extremely anxious. Facing pressure from other family members, she could only confide in the man who made her feel safe. At the same time, with her son deeply in love, she was forced to accept the daughter-in-law who had her in a compromising position. She had thought that Bu Qin and Mo Hyun's relationship would return to how it was before, but unexpectedly, Mo Hyun discovered another earth-shattering secret. "My first encounter with Bu Qin wasn't by chance, but a deliberate arrangement." That night, while Bu Qin was fast asleep, Mo Hyun quietly got out of bed and retrieved an album from a drawer. She looked over each letter her husband had written to her 5 years ago. She always felt something was off. Then, she immediately rushed to Pil-ju's room. Finally, she discovered the secret hidden behind a framed photograph. Wasn't this her at 15 years old? Mo Hyun had loved the wrong man. All these years, the one who had silently protected her, the man who always brought warmth, and the one who wrote those love letters, wasn't Bu Qin, but lawyer Pil-ju. Why did he give her up to someone else in the beginning? She had to ask him and get to the bottom of it. After being in a coma for over a month, Pil-ju finally woke up. He was eager to return to the family and continue his plan for revenge. Mo Hyun intended to confront him, but Bu Qin appeared quickly, interrupting their conversation. Her mother-in-law had also been anxiously awaiting Pil-ju's awakening, unable to contain her excitement. But Pil-ju completely ignored her questions and went straight to see the chairman. The chairman, already plagued by negative tabloid news, immediately demanded a solution from Pil-ju. Pil-ju had already anticipated this. To gain the media's favor with the Chaebol, they needed to clean up the management. The chairman quickly organized an internal meeting, asking his son, the director, to proactively resign and take the fall for the family. Although Sung Man was extremely reluctant, for the sake of the conglomerate's future, the chairman disregarded his son's feelings and immediately held a press conference, blaming Sung Man for all the company's wrongdoings. Just like that, he was forced to leave the company in disgrace. Pil-ju had achieved his goal. He had to show the bastard who almost killed him what a real party was. He'd pressure him, and if he still harbored ill intentions, he'd better watch out for his son's life. Sung Man wasn't someone easily coerced, but he hadn't yet found an opportunity to retaliate against Pil-ju. Bu Qin became the biggest beneficiary of this incident. Pil-ju's maneuver had brought him one step closer to the chairman's seat. Mo Hyun also had the chance to uncover the truth. "The night I was drunk, you were the one who carried me home, weren't you, Pil-ju?" At this point, he couldn't deny it. Pil-ju admitted that he had secretly loved her for years. It was only when Bu Qin appeared that he completely gave up. Mo Hyun didn't believe these confusing words. "If you had given up, why did you keep my picture from 20 years ago?" He didn't dare to reveal that he was the one who orchestrated their meeting, nor did he dare to confess his motive for revenge. When Mo Hyun expressed her current anguish, Pil-ju couldn't control himself and moved closer to her. However, they were simply not meant to be together. At that moment, his mother burst into the room. She warned her daughter-in-law not to meet with him privately anymore, implicitly signaling Pil-ju to keep his distance as well. He immediately snapped back to reality. His revenge plan was incomplete. He had to expedite things. He'd helped Buchin climb the ladder towards the director position, as the second young master had become a stain on the corporation's reputation. Logically, the position belonged to Buchin, but unexpectedly, the chairman backtracked, claiming the second young master also deserved a fair shot. He decided to give both grandsons a short period to prove their capabilities. Whoever brought in the most profit would become the director. Buchin was indeed talented. During his time in the US, he had begun researching a side effect-free contraceptive pill and had successfully completed clinical trials. He had originally intended to surprise the chairman with this achievement. However, Pil-ju had already investigated the project and instructed Buchin to publicize it, using the opportunity to kick out the second young master and secure the director position for him. But Buchin refused. He had his own plans. Pil-ju, however, didn't care and immediately instructed his assistant to spread news of the new drug across various online platforms. The chairman, having heard about it from his caregiver, praised Buchin's talent. With Pil-ju's help, the director's position would undoubtedly be his. News of Buchin's impending promotion spread throughout South Korea. Sung Man, already disgruntled after being suspended for 15 days, and now with his own son proving useless, couldn't sit still any longer. He immediately exposed Buchin and CO1's relationship online. The media exploded. The news shocked Mo Hyun's mother. She couldn't believe her seemingly filial son-in-law could be so ruthless. Though she pitied her daughter's suffering, Mo Hyun assured her she could handle it. Upon discovering the news, Pil-ju immediately had his assistant track the IP address of the post, confirming Sung Man's involvement. He raced to CO1's house, but he was a step too late. Sung Man was already waiting there. The baby became a bargaining chip, and Sung Man had already persuaded CO1 to hold a press conference. Pil-ju intended to snatch her away, but he was powerless as Sung Man had a group of thugs with him. When his mother learned of her son's exposed scandal, Pil-ju became the only one who could resolve the situation. Unexpectedly, Sung Man, with his silver tongue, convinced CO1 to reveal how Pil-ju's mother had tried to have her killed. Just as she was wavering, Pil-ju's assistant pinpointed their location. Pil-ju didn't hesitate, single-handedly taking down the guards at the door. CO1, terrified of the man who had repeatedly pressured her, was surprised when Pil-ju didn't act violently. He wanted to take her somewhere safe where she could calmly decide whether or not to hold the press conference. He took her to the top floor of a hotel. CO1, understandably distressed, admitted her life had been incredibly difficult. Pregnant at 6 months, abandoned, then taken back in, she thought she could use her child to climb the social ladder, only to nearly lose her life. Pil-ju didn't pressure her, giving CO1 ample time to think. However, upon returning home, Buchin, worried about his ex-girlfriend's decision, rushed to the hotel to find her. He even brought his assistant to carry the baby out. Fearing she would ruin his chance at the promotion, he pulled out a prepared knife. Facing the woman he once loved, he didn't hesitate, stabbing down with all his might. Fortunately, the knife landed in the pillow. CO1 never expected her ex-boyfriend to have become so terrifying. Buchin warned her that their only remaining connection was for the sake of their son, and he would eliminate anything that hindered his career. CO1 didn't dare to resist, her feelings for him completely extinguished. His mother wouldn't stay idle either, scolding the chauffeur and insisting they needed to get rid of CO1 permanently. However, as soon as they left the house, they saw Buchin sitting in the car, silently weeping. He was, after all, Buchin's father, and seeing his son go to such lengths for the family's benefit naturally caused him some heartache. His mother and Pil-ju were determined to devise a plan to deal with CO1. Buchin, his eyes swollen from crying, returned home and told his mother he had persuaded CO1 not to hold the press conference, but she was curious about his methods. When Buchin smugly pulled out a knife from his pocket, Pil-ju immediately sensed something was wrong. He guessed CO1 might do something foolish, especially since her phone was unreachable. By the time he reached the hotel, it was too late. Pil-ju shouted himself hoarse, but no one answered. Only when he opened the bathroom door did he discover that both mother and son were still alive, CO1 trembling all over. Pilju was determined to protect them, not only out of sympathy for their ordeal, but also for his own revenge plan. The scandal surrounding Bu Chen finally subsided. The chairman then presented him with a family heirloom, a commemorative gift from a Chinese businessman when he was 19. This further solidified Bu Chen's position as the future CEO. The second son, on the other hand, was in deep trouble. The chairman learned that he had leaked Bu Chen's scandal and immediately revoked his candidacy. He accused him of bringing shame to the family. While the second son was foolish, his father was not. Sung Man brought his son before the chairman to beg for forgiveness. As his own flesh and blood, the chairman's heart softened. But Pilju quickly intervened, arguing that an example needed to be made for the tens of thousands of employees. Sung Man, unable to accept being ostracized, was sure to try and drag Pilju down with him. Currently, Pilju held the family's fate in his hands. However, Bu Chen wasn't stupid. He clearly knew Pilju's true identity but remained silent. Coupled with the second son's warnings, Bu Chen grew increasingly wary. His half-brother would eventually try to usurp his position as CEO. As for Pilju, how could he be satisfied with that position? The revenge task force he established had been manipulating the family's stock. However, unexpectedly, Bu Chen found their base and even attempted to bribe Pilju's assistant. Knowing that Bu Chen had discovered his true identity, Pilju decided to teach him a lesson. He planned to reveal that he had orchestrated the marriage between Bu Chen and Mo Hyun. This time, Bu Chen was truly frightened. Pilju's demeanor made it clear he wasn't joking. Before Bu Chen could react, Pilju arranged a meeting with Mo Hyun. He not only ignored Bu Chen's calls, but also conveniently turned off Mo Hyun's phone so she could understand the situation clearly. Pilju walked straight into her office, stunning Mo Hyun. After advising her to prepare herself, he turned on an expensive projector. Photos of Mo Hyun from childhood to the present appeared on the screen. Pilju had seemingly been a silent observer throughout her life. Initially, he had observed and photographed her to understand her better. But eventually, he found himself falling in love with her. However, for the sake of his revenge, he had suppressed his feelings and orchestrated the meeting between Mo Hyun and Bu Chen. Mo Hyun's world had crumbled many times. All because of the man before her, the first love she had searched for so long. Now, the lives of 3 people have been altered by him. A mistake like this, a single hug can't resolve. Internally, 2 of them are deeply conflicted. Just then, Bu Chen arrived. He had called his wife repeatedly, but she hadn't answered. While the 2 were in a private space, unable to hear anything, they were unaware that Bu Chen had arrived at the door. He heard a phone ringing from behind a cabinet. He slowly approached, and just as he was about to open the door, he was suddenly stopped by the assistant. As a wealthy heir, Bu Chen attempted to bribe the assistant for help. Unexpectedly, at that moment, Mo Hyun descended the stairs. Bu Chen rushed over, demanding to know what she had been doing. Mo Hyun feigned an innocent yet cold expression, catching the furious Bu Chen off guard. Seeing Pilju come downstairs, he immediately lunged at him to vent his anger. He was about to unleash further fury, but Mo Hyun stopped him, urging him to take her home. Although they hadn't done anything in the room, Pilju had revealed the truth to Mo Hyun. Her marriage to the young heir had been orchestrated by him. The secret kept for 5 years had finally been exposed. Bu Chen, filled with remorse, wanted to hold on to his wife and start anew. Mo Hyun, unable to continue this marriage of convenience, told Bu Chen to prepare for divorce. She also needed to clarify one thing, whether Councilman Na's current incapacitated state was caused by this family. So, she took the recording Pilju had given her to the chairman. Although it contained a conversation of him coercing the councilman to commit suicide, he wasn't afraid at all and scolded his daughter-in-law, telling her not to try to pressure him. He dared her to take the recording to the investigators. Mo Hyun was astonished by his arrogance. Powerless and driven out of the family, in her anger, she picked up her phone to call the police. Although she still harbored doubts about Pilju's actions, he stopped her. The chairman's arrogance stemmed from the news that Councilman Na was still alive. Even if investigated, the worst he could be charged with was attempted coercion to suicide. This also became the reason she decided to forgive Pilju. Mo Hyun sought out Councilman Na's assistant. From him, she learned that her own father had also used her. Initially, he had willingly married off his daughter in exchange for campaign funds. Mo Hyun couldn't believe it. Her father had sold her to the Jang family to become mayor. His attempted suicide was likely driven by shame. She no longer desired revenge, but wanted to confront Buchin and lay everything bare. If the whole world had used her, then the Jang family must compensate her for her ruined life. Buchin accepted financial compensation but refused to divorce her. He hoped that after all the lies were exposed, they could start over. Mo Hyun played the recording of the chairman and Councilman Na. Buchin, reeling from the truth, could only repeatedly apologize. At this point, there was no chance of holding on to her. If they couldn't end the marriage amicably, they would have to resort to legal means. Mo Hyun wanted to live for herself for once, to pursue her true feelings. She had discovered that Pil-ju's manipulation was driven by revenge for his deceased parents and younger brother. She wanted to persuade him to let go of his hatred. The two went their separate ways, but he had gone too far down the path of revenge, destined for a life of solitude. Even the warmth of first love couldn't make him relinquish his obsession with vengeance. Buchin's transformation forced Pil-ju to accelerate his plans. He waited for the day Pil-ju helped him become CEO. After successfully gaining control over personnel, Buchin immediately recalled the family's second son and appointed him vice president. Clearly, the two brothers were colluding against Pil-ju. He went to the chairman to report this. Although the chairman reprimanded Buchin for abusing his power to reinstate someone he had previously punished, the two brothers knew that everything was Pil-ju's doing. Buchin immediately sent out a personnel transfer order, wanting to send Pil-ju to the company's S branch as a manager. It was time for him to strike back. He wore the necklace his father left him years ago, along with evidence of the chairman's crimes he'd gathered for over a decade. The illegitimate grandson, who disappeared 20 years ago, had reappeared. When the chairman opened the unique necklace, the picture inside startled him. Wasn't this his deceased son and grandson? He immediately asked Pil-ju where he got it. However, Pil-ju straightened his clothes and slowly stood up. Grandfather. This word, grandfather, nearly gave the chairman a stroke. Pil-ju, assuming his identity as the eldest grandson of the family, respectfully bowed his head in greeting. The chairman never would have dreamed that the almighty lawyer, who had been hidden within the family for 20 years, was actually the illegitimate grandson he had abandoned. The two stared at each other for half an hour. The chairman finally asked Pil-ju what he wanted. He bluntly stated that he wanted the chairman to guarantee him access to funds in Korea's largest bank to purchase the family's stock. The chairman naturally thought he was talking nonsense. The evidence of his crimes from the past 20 years was the reason Pil-ju had concealed his identity. Are you blackmailing me? Yes, chairman. Fear flickered across the chairman's face, but he still needed to confirm with a DNA test. Before dawn, they secretly went to the family's hospital for a blood test. To prevent any manipulation, they even held each other's phones. After 8 hours of waiting, the results finally came back, a 99% match. Even after receiving the results, the chairman remained relatively calm and asked Pil-ju, "How did you manage to infiltrate this family all those years ago?" An ordinary traffic accident had caused deep hatred between two families. The student driver was a wealthy heir who couldn't accept the sudden death of his father and drove drunk. He collided with a gangster who, unable to pay compensation, invited the young man back to his place. Learning that Buchin was a Chaebol heir, he decided to demand a large sum of money. But Buchin didn't dare ask his family for money, so he resigned himself to his fate. However, the gangster's underling was unexpectedly honorable. Touched by Buchin's hunger after several days without food, he took pity on him. But when Buchin revealed his father's name, Pil-ju froze. Wasn't this man his half-brother? He didn't dare reveal his identity, though, because he was just an illegitimate child. Years ago, the family had heartlessly abandoned him. Fortunately, he had survived. So, he decided to let Buchin go. But before Buchin could escape, he ran into Pil-ju's boss. Pil-ju intended to protect Buchin and let him escape first, but he couldn't overpower his boss. Just as his boss grabbed Buchin, the young heir suddenly pulled out a knife. Pil-ju loved him for it. Pil-ju hadn't expected to encounter someone so reckless. As a result, both of them were taken to the interrogation room. The gangster, also involved, cooperated with the authorities. The butler merely offered a brief greeting. Buchin saw a glimmer of hope for his release. The investigator asked the gangster to identify the assailant. Without hesitation, he pointed at Pil-ju. Perhaps this was the power of money. Even though Pil-ju cried out his innocence, no one listened. Therefore, he had to accept a 2-year sentence. He was naturally resentful. After his release, he continued to protect Buchin. Pil-ju had endured all kinds of hardships since childhood, so fighting 10 men at once was nothing to him. His bravery frightened Buchin, who tried to shrink away and run. Pil-ju immediately grabbed him. Buchin was terrified. But unexpectedly, the young man suddenly knelt before him. "Young master, let's be friends." Having unexpectedly gained a free bodyguard, Buchin quickly brought Pil-ju home. His mother, seeing that Pil-ju had taken the blame for her son and recognizing his honorable actions, decided to take him in and raise him as her own. But at midnight, Pil-ju suddenly went to the madam's room with a knife. He knew she was the mastermind behind the attempt on his life. As he hesitated, the madam suddenly woke up. Thinking this poor boy was desperate, she decided to fund his law school education, conveniently positioning him to help her son become the CEO of the corporation. 20 years passed in a flash. Pil-ju now aimed to control the entire family fortune. Everyone knew the two had undergone DNA testing. He wanted to secure a loan guarantee from the chairman before the largest bank in Korea opened the next day. The chairman always despised promiscuity and illegitimate children. How could he entrust his life's work to a bastard grandson? Pil-ju had anticipated this for some time and immediately instructed his assistant to publicly release all evidence of the chairman's crimes online. The two quickly engaged in their first battle. The chairman spent a fortune hiring top-IT specialists to delete all of Pil-ju's posts with lightning speed. This tactic completely defeated Pil-ju. At this point, the chairman called him to arrange a meeting. "You only know how to post that nonsense online. Do you still have another backup plan?" "Mr. Chairman, I've deleted all the posts. Do you still have any tricks up your sleeve? Let's see them." Pil-ju had better hurry up. "Yes, Mr. Chairman. Plan B will be implemented quickly. Don't regret it then." This old man knew better. Pil-ju possessed documents incriminating the chairman. When Pil-ju's assistant reacted, he discovered someone had traced their online activity and come to their office. He rushed out to check, but was knocked unconscious with a hammer on the stairs. Several thugs disguised as cleaning staff barged in with dozens of sacks, completely ignoring the unconscious assistant. They used a special method to open their safe. Quickly, the documents filled several large sacks, nearly overflowing the back of their pickup truck. Just then, Pil-ju returned. Fortunately, his assistant hadn't logged out. Although the office had been ransacked, they overlooked his drinking cup, because a USB drive was hidden under the lid. This war demanded a victor. The loser feigned normalcy in front of the staff. This time, the chairman had miscalculated. As the meeting concluded, the chairman was immediately swarmed by reporters upon exiting. The chairman of Korea's most powerful corporation was implicated in numerous crimes. The national media exploded. Clearly, Pil-ju had meticulously planned everything. As soon as the chairman arrived home, he received a summons for questioning. Moreover, no one dared to defend him this time. Pil-ju, despite losing his office, was relieved his assistant was unharmed. The two were close as brothers. Even if it meant ruin, the assistant would help him get revenge. The two met privately again. The chairman, no longer arrogant, immediately called the bank president to secure the loan guarantee for Pil-ju. Before receiving the full amount, he would quickly help Buchin ascend to the chairmanship. Pil-ju's goal was simple. Buchin wasn't the chairman's biological grandson. Once Buchin took over, Pil-ju would reveal his true identity to the media. With the shares in his possession, coupled with his status as the eldest grandson, seizing control of the family corporation would be easy. The mother and son were completely unaware of Pil-ju's ultimate goal. Unaware of the pressure he was exerting on the chairman, they cooperated fully. The madam was determined to eliminate all obstacles to her son's rise. The chairman, to protect his secret, was forced to dismiss his driver. The driver, who had concealed his identity for over 20 years, was eliminated before his son could even call him dad. Buchin was at the peak of his fame. With Pil-ju's help, he had successfully overtaken the chairman position. His grandfather was still unaware that the person giving the speech on stage wasn't his actual grandson, but the son of his chauffeur and daughter-in-law. An hour earlier, fearing exposure, the madam had urged the chauffeur to leave South Korea immediately, giving him a thermos filled with poison before his departure. After the chauffeur left, she couldn't help but weep bitterly. He was, after all, her son's biological father. As the chauffeur drove away, he contemplated texting Bu Chin to reveal his true identity, but ultimately hesitated. At that moment, two uninvited guests appeared. Now, the chauffeur understood the madam's intentions. The warm thermos was meant to send him on his final journey. Drinking it was the only option, a supposedly gentler death than being stabbed. However, the poison was potent. Before he could send the message to Bu Chin, he succumbed. After assuming his new role, Bu Chin received the news of the chauffeur's death. Unaware that the deceased was his biological father, he only mourned the loss of someone who had always cared for him. When Pil-ju arrived to handle the funeral arrangements, he discovered a will, which he suspected the madam had orchestrated. He decided to expose her 20-year-old secret. Pil-ju had already switched the pen Mao Ran usually used for signing documents and recorded a conversation between her and Bu Chin, which he then presented to their grandfather for his private contemplation. "Mom, I know I have two fathers. One is the deceased vice chairman, and the other, I don't know who he is. My real father, my real father." These words stunned the grandfather. The company leadership had been passed to an outsider. Pil-ju was quite pleased, having successfully plunged the old fox into despair. His stepmother was next. The madam had promised Pil-ju a reward once Bu Chin took over, but he had a more surprising gift for her. He leaned in and whispered that he was the baby she had abandoned 20 years ago. The madam thought Pil-ju was drunk until he mentioned his birth mother's name. She finally realized how he had survived. "You despicable woman, you discarded your own brother so you could live a life of luxury. I'm leaving." This enraged Pil-ju. He wanted her to experience the same suffocating fear his brother had felt. The madam couldn't escape. For Pil-ju, her suffering was just beginning. He demanded she convince Bu Chin to relinquish the chairman position to him, hand over all her shares, and leave South Korea. But the madam suddenly became defiant. The statute of limitations had expired on the past murder, but CO1's attempted murder and the chauffeur's poisoning were recent events. If Bu Chin learned his mother had killed his father, would he have the will to live? The madam, completely broken by Pil-ju's threats, knelt and begged for forgiveness. But Pil-ju, harboring such deep resentment, wouldn't relent. He gave her 3 days to meet his demands. Bu Chin was still oblivious. He and Pil-ju had grown up together, and despite manipulating him, Pil-ju didn't want to confront him directly. The madam revealed Pil-ju's true identity to Bu Chin. He had already known the truth, but had concealed it from his mother, fearing she wouldn't be able to handle the shock. But the madam dismissed Pil-ju as merely a dog they had raised. If the dog changed, how would it affect its owners? "Don't be ridiculous. You've always sensed he harbored some resentment towards us. I don't understand why. Do you know the reason?" She wanted Bu Chin to remain ignorant of the past. She immediately sought out Sung Man, revealing Pil-ju's identity. He had endured Mao Ran's arrogance and often complied with Pil-ju's schemes against him, but he agreed with his sister-in-law to oust the outsider and reclaim the family's assets. The madam saw a glimmer of hope. However, Sung Man turned his back the moment he left. He quickly compared Bu Chin's DNA with his son's, confirming that the chairman was not a Jang family member. He guessed that his father, the chairman, also knew about the two illegitimate grandsons. He and Sung Man had to protect their pure bloodline. Just like that, Pil-ju and Bu Chin had another opponent. The chairman suddenly started treating Sung Man's family well. This also made Sung Man's wife realize the situation. She knew Sung Man had made other plans and that she was isolated within the family. So she proactively sought out Pil-ju, surrendered, and promised to try to persuade Bu Chin to give up the chairmanship, only begging to leave some shares for her and her son. But Pil-ju refused. He wouldn't leave them even a single share, let alone a whole company. Sung Man's wife became increasingly miserable, because even her son started to hate her. From Mo Hyun, Bu Chin learned that Pil-ju had lost his younger brother years ago. At this point, Bu Chin finally understood everything. Pil-ju had approached him with a purpose from the very beginning. He guessed that the person who harmed Pilju's brother was his own mother. What made him feel even more guilty was that the woman he had been married to for 5 years was Pilju's first love. He wanted to talk to Pilju, but at that moment, he received a message with a meeting invitation. Buchin quickly drove to the meeting place. Sadly, the message wasn't from Pilju. Pilju, meanwhile, had a pile of evidence against the chairman and wanted to force him to hand over the chairmanship. Things went terribly wrong for Buchin. He entered Pilju's former office and couldn't get out. Pilju had a bad feeling and quickly asked his assistant to investigate Buchin's movements. When he arrived at the door of the office, he found a raging fire inside. There was no time to call the fire department, so he rushed into the flames alone. Luckily, Buchin was still alive, only suffering from severe smoke inhalation and needing time to regain consciousness. Sung Man's wife was certain that this was the chairman's doing. Just then, the assistant called Pilju. He had discovered that the arson was arranged by the chairman and advised Pilju to leave the family and abandon his revenge plan. After all, the old man was not someone to be trifled with, but Pilju refused. He wanted to expose the chairman's scheme to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. In front of the chairman, he demanded that he remove Buchin from his position and give it to him. The chairman naturally disagreed. "A bastard like you wants to be the chairman? I don't have time to waste words with you. In addition to your existing crimes, Chairman, I'll add the attempted murder of your grandson to the list. The decision is yours." The old man was in deep trouble. He had just been pressured by his grandson, and now his son and other grandson were plotting against him. If he gave the chairmanship to Pilju, they would take Sung Man's wife's shares to fight against him. Once someone else took over, he would be just a puppet. On the day of the internal meeting, as the secretary prepared to announce the chairman's decision, Sung Man's wife vehemently objected. After all, her son, the newly appointed chairman, was in a coma. To be fair, Pilju suggested selecting someone to share the chairmanship with equal authority. This received everyone's agreement. The choices were now down to Pilju and Sung Man's son. Sung Man was naturally very confident and directly approached his wife, wanting to pool their shares to fight against Pilju. But they underestimated a man blinded by hatred. The secretary decided that the 2 candidates must have an equal number of shares. Sung Man's wife had already given Pilju a portion of her shares. Pilju reminded everyone that he also had the shares the chairman had helped him acquire through a loan. This made everyone worried. The chairman knew he had been outsmarted but was powerless. Sung Man's wife regretted her actions even more. The presidency was originally destined for him. Unexpectedly, at this moment, Buchin suddenly woke up and wanted to meet Pilju. The 2 men of the same age stared at each other. Buchin offered to concede the presidency to Pilju, hoping he would forgive his mother. However, Pilju wasn't so noble, stating he wanted to see his stepmother and grandfather fall into the abyss. This left Buchin feeling powerless. "Why didn't you just let me die? Why save me? I didn't want to be saved. Don't flatter yourself. If you were ruined, I would have to bear the consequences, obviously." Pilju was no longer the Jang family's obedient dog. He had to secure the presidency to eliminate his direct rival and expose Sung Man's tax evasion to the public. Sung Man, unable to refute the evidence, had to accept a year in jail. The grandfather's most trusted confidant also ended up behind bars. He knew this was the work of his illegitimate grandson, but couldn't do anything about it. Pilju became the sole candidate. They could only vote for or against him. The shareholders' meeting was quickly convened. The assistant, also a shareholder, was there to help Pilju gauge the votes. Everyone in the family voted against him. In the end, there were only 40 votes in favor and 47 against. This result clearly frustrated Pilju. He immediately confronted his grandfather. "Chairman, please give me your vote. You're overthinking it." The grandfather never imagined that Pilju had investigated the shares he'd purchased using a dummy account. If he didn't vote in favor, Pilju would expose his actions, which harmed the interests of other shareholders. The grandfather had no choice but to have his secretary cast his vote for Pilju. Thus, the chairmanship of the corporation finally fell into Pilju's hands. But Pilju didn't stop there. He continued researching advanced business management methods, intending to kick the rest of the family out of the company after becoming chairman. The grandfather finally saw his cunning. Pilju had taken control of the entire family's assets. but the grandfather still had to eliminate Congressman Na to protect himself. After all, he held the family's secrets. Ultimately, the plan failed. The grandfather gradually accepted this grandson who was as cunning as himself, and had Pil-ju read the farewell letter his mother had left him. Every word urged her son to let go of his hatred and live happily. The grandfather also implicitly urged Pil-ju to forget the past and manage the family business well. But it was too late. Congressman Na, after regaining consciousness, suddenly posted a video online, intending to reveal all the Jang family's secrets. All of Korea was buzzing with gossip. This accelerated the family's downfall. Let's see Pil-ju's reaction. Knowing that Congressman Na possessed a recording that could threaten him, he still encouraged its release. Mo Hyun finally understood. Pil-ju was prepared to lose everything. As for Buchin, he couldn't believe his father-in-law was still alive. Ironically, he had cried his eyes out at the coffin earlier. He, as Pil-ju bluntly stated, was the only one unaware of the truth. Buchin finally realized his long-standing ignorance, like a clown in this family. He decided to return the family heirloom to his grandfather, withdrawing from the power struggle. Buchin sought out Co-1, pouring out his troubles. Co-1, having already seen the news on TV, felt fortunate to be an outsider, but Buchin still felt ashamed. He hoped the baby would keep her last name. After selling his shares, he would give a portion to the mother and child. However, their relationship could never return to how it was before. The scene shifts to the chairman. After paying his fines, Sung Man was finally released and left to fend for himself. The chairman had hoped he would shoulder all the blame. After all, he couldn't spend his remaining years in prison. Sung Man, having just been released, naturally refused to go back. He wanted to fight back, so he sought out the madam, hoping for cooperation. But she had her own plans and didn't want to be in the same boat as Sung Man anymore. Helpless, he sent his chauffeur of 20 years to silence the assemblyman. However, the moment the chauffeur plunged the knife, he knew he was doomed. Pil-ju, anticipating the family's next move, had been waiting there. Sung Man claimed he did it to protect his son, as the second young master had previously driven the assemblyman to suicide. Pil-ju once again had leverage against Sung Man. He would eventually hand it over to the investigator, but not yet. Sung Man's attempt at resistance had failed. Next, it was the madam's turn. Buchin hoped that he and his mother would sell all their shares, move to Shanghai, buy a house, and live out the rest of their lives peacefully. If they got bored, they could find work as ordinary employees. But the madam wasn't resigned to this fate. Having had a taste of the high life, why should she sink to the bottom of society? If she were to go down, she would drag Pil-ju down with her. Taking advantage of the uproar surrounding the assemblyman's case, she publicly revealed Pil-ju's true parentage and accused him of using underhanded tactics to become chairman. As soon as the announcement was made, the company's stock plummeted. Pil-ju played his trump card, instructing his assistant to hand over the evidence. The madam had framed the chauffeur for the assemblyman's murder. As soon as she returned home, she received a call from the police. Unexpectedly, Buchin, who had just arrived, answered the phone and learned that his mother had ruthlessly disposed of the chauffeur who had always cared for him. He was devastated. When the madam emerged from her bath, she saw Buchin's farewell note and realized her son knew the truth about the chauffeur. The investigator instructed her to stay home and wait for them to pick her up. Knowing she couldn't fight back anymore, the madam put on exquisite makeup and discreetly poisoned a glass of wine, inviting Pil-ju for a late-night chat. Having lived together for 20 years, Pil-ju naturally wouldn't refuse her final request. However, he was completely unaware of the lethal dose of poison in the glass and, without hesitation, drank it all. Let's leave this family together, in a coffin. We've both drunk poison. My acting isn't bad, is it? The madam was shocked by his performance. It turned out that before Pil-ju entered the room, he had been intercepted by her assistant. The nanny had seen Marin searching for a black bottle of medicine. The assistant, suspecting it was poison, had the nanny slip the bottle into the pocket of the Korean man. Perhaps the wealthiest are the most fearful. They can easily bribe others with high prices. The madam was utterly defeated, but Pil-ju wouldn't let her off easy. He wanted to personally send her to prison to spend the rest of her life there. He intended to humiliate her and then leave, but unexpectedly, Buchin suddenly burst in, gun blazing. Pilju assumed he wouldn't dare to pull the trigger, but in order to protect his mother, Buchin fired. The madam tried to commit suicide by drinking poison. Pilju and Buchin ultimately prevented her from embracing death. Before heading to the investigation room, the madam instructed her assistant to take care of the household chores. She claimed she'd be out quickly, but the assistant retorted that she was quitting that very day. It was then that the madam realized her own staff had been bribed by Pilju. Her crimes were too severe. Everyone knew she wouldn't be getting out again. Pilju finally got what he wanted. Looking at a happy family photo, he burst into tears. Consumed by revenge, he had forgotten himself, never even experiencing love. But he didn't regret it. This very vengeance had driven Pilju to excel, forcing his grandfather to abandon the traditional hereditary succession. He secretly invested in pharmaceutical companies to participate in research. While his grandfather couldn't accept the modern management model, only Pilju could now lead the corporation's growth. During an internal meeting, Pilju demanded that senior executives implement a reformed management system. The company would select the CEO based on merit, eliminating outdated titles like chairman. This new system faced fierce opposition from Sung Man. The grandfather also proposed giving the final decision to the shareholders, rendering the new system irrelevant. As the meeting concluded, the grandfather stepped outside to find a man waiting at the gate. "Father, it's me. I'm Jiang Sang." The grandfather had never acknowledged the son's existence and cared even less now. But Jiang Sang was indignant. Why could Pilju, also an illegitimate son, remain in the family and enjoy wealth and privilege? Because of his competence, of course. Pilju told him to try harder. He had already given him money, but it seemed insufficient. Upon returning home, the grandfather saw a news report about the chairman donating 4 trillion won to pharmaceutical companies and 500 billion won to social causes. He immediately knew this was Pilju's doing and scolded him for donating his money. But Pilju explained it was the first step of his reforms, infuriating his grandfather to the point of collapse. At the hospital, the doctor announced that the grandfather had lost his ability to speak. His caretaker, previously unnoticed, proved to be the most virtuous person, remaining by his side. Congressman Na learned of the chairman's critical condition. Life was indeed unpredictable. Only after facing death's door did people relinquish their ambitions. The congressman decided against holding a press conference to expose the family's secrets and chose to confess. He finally apologized to his daughter. But Mo Hyan's ruined life couldn't be restored. Still, both mother and daughter forgave the man once blinded by ambition. Although the congressman didn't publicly reveal the family's crimes, Pilju couldn't avoid prosecution. He gave Mo Hyan evidence of the crimes committed by all family members. She understood that Pilju wanted them to face the consequences together. She immediately took the evidence to the investigators, reporting the Jiang family's crimes to the police. This not only helped her father's early release, but also potentially reduced Pilju's sentence for cooperating. Mo Hyan decided to leave her job at the welfare organization. However, Pilju hoped she would stay and manage the family's foundation properly. Mo Hyan knew his past suffering. Pilju's involvement in providing election funds to the congressman was bound to backfire eventually. Pilju always felt guilty for ruining Mo Hyan's life with his revenge, but he had also saved many lives. In her heart, Mo Hyan had already forgiven him. However, under the circumstances, they couldn't be together. Though reluctant, their lingering handshake felt incredibly awkward. Before the sentencing, Pilju and Bu Chin visited the madam. She had become thinner and had lost her mind. In her delirium, she mistook Pilju for her young husband. Her crazed ramblings inadvertently revealed the truth. She had killed her husband years ago. This revelation shocked Buchin. At this point, even Pilju was powerless. Two men grew up together, both pitiable. Buchin still doesn't know who his real father is. To spare him the pain, Pilju also keeps the truth hidden. Buchin wants to completely leave the family. They make a pact that if they meet again, they'll act like strangers. The day of the Chaebol family's downfall finally arrives. With a bang of the gavel, Pilju is sentenced to 3 years in prison, his grandfather to 7, Sung Man to 7, and the second young master to 2. This time, Pilju is rightfully convicted, no longer serving time in Buchin's place. In the blink of an eye, 3 years pass. Pilju still has the same ageless face. Upon returning to the corporation, the chairman has put the company in order. Thanks to Mo Hyun's support, Pil-ju feels comforted. After years apart, the spark between them has diminished. Pil-ju decides not to become the chairman. Before leaving, he wants to go to the rooftop for one last look. The person he can't let go of is his assistant. Fortunately, the assistant has already gone straight, no longer involved in hacking. For Pil-ju, this is a perfect ending. Unexpectedly, his grandfather's illegitimate son appears and attacks Pil-ju, beating him badly. Just when it seems like it's game over, the director says no. Mo Hyun knows Pil-ju is on the rooftop. She rushes to save him once again. Another year passes quickly. A delivery person overcomes all obstacles to reach Pil-ju's old house. The letter is from Mo Hyun, inviting him to apply for the CEO position at the company. Pil-ju decides to return, completely abandoning the name Kang Pil-ju. He wants to truly become a member of the Jang family. When he arrives at the company to apply with a completely new look, the company has completely transformed under new management. Pil-ju doesn't use any backdoor connections. This man is inherently talented. Just as his interview finishes, Boo-chan also returns to the company. They pass each other by chance. After years apart, they don't acknowledge each other, honoring their agreement to act like strangers. Mo Hyun enters and notices them both. Is this ending finally perfect? The writer wants good people to live well. This is where the story ends. Thank you for always being with me. See you in the next videos on the channel.